Welcome to episode 10 of Twisted Tales, a channel that focuses on the paranormal, supernatural, and downright sketchy stuff in the world around us. Today, we bring you our top 10 most haunted locations in the UK. So sit back, enjoy and subscribe, but above all, don't fall asleep. Number 10. Pluckley Village, Kent. Nestled amidst peaceful countryside, in a quiet part of Kent you'll find the picturesque village of Pluckley, famously used as the backdrop in the 1990s for shooting of the Darling Buds of May. Despite appearances, Pluckley is widely considered one of the most haunted places in Kent and across England. Looking at this pretty place, you might find it hard to believe that it was once named the most haunted village in Britain in the Guinness Book of World Records in 1989. An astounding 12 to 16 distinctive ghosts have been reported to reside in the village, so it's easy to see why it's so popular for ghost hunters hoping to catch a sighting. Amongst Pluckley's numerous ghostly tales is that of the watercress woman who witnesses have reported to have seen sitting on Pinnock Bridge smoking her pipe. The elderly woman was well known in the village for making a living, gathering watercress from the river and selling it to the villagers. It is said that one evening, after drinking, she fell asleep and her pipe dropped onto her clothing. Within moments she was consumed by the flames. She is believed to still haunt Pinnock Bridge, with some witnesses describing a faint pink glow which hovers in the air above the spot where she died. There are a number of spots around the village that have a distinct feel to them, and several of these haunted places are connected to the Daring family, lords of the manor from the 15th century until World War I. An intriguing remnant of their tenure can be seen in the round-topped windows that grace so many of the buildings. During the English Civil War, Lord Daring escaped capture by Cromwell's forces when he dived headfirst through such a window. When he later came to rebuild his manor house, he commemorated defeat by having every window built in the same style, and this in turn was copied throughout the village. Sadly, the house itself burnt down in 1951. But many houses you pass on the walk still feature this reminder of his great escape. The walk will give you the chance to enjoy picturesque countryside and fresh, pure air, albeit air that is charged with a great deal of psychic energy. Many have traveled to Pluckley in the hopes of capturing evidence of spirits, and one such group asked to spend a night in the village's Church of St. Nicholas in the 1970s, bringing along cameras and tape recorders to document their stay. The story goes that the next morning when the vicar of the church came to greet them, they were disappointed that the night had been uneventful and commented that the only interesting part had been the vicar's dog who had come to visit them a few times, to which the vicar replied that he did not have a dog. Number 9. Blickling Hall, Norwich. Blickling Hall is an English stately home in the village of Blickling, Norfolk. The original house was built in the 11th century, but the house as we know it today was constructed in 1619. In the 15th and 16th century, the hall was home to the Boleyn family, and their spirits still haunt the estate and the house. Once voted as the most haunted house in Britain, the Grand Blickling Hall that you'll see today stands on the ruins of a medieval manor house, once home to the Boleyn family, with Anne Boleyn herself said to have been born here. It's no surprise then that tales of hauntings at Blickling Hall center on her as one of history's most famous figures. Historians believe Anne was born at Blickling Hall between 1501 and 1507. This might be the reason why she revisits the house each year on the anniversary of her execution. Anne was infamously beheaded by her husband, King Henry VIII, after failing to give him a son and heir to the throne. Her headless ghost is said to arrive at night in a coach driven by a headless horseman. The coach drives up to the hall and then vanishes into thin air, with people saying they've seen Anne's head resting on her lap. She has been seen in other parts of Blickling Hall as well, as most of the eyewitnesses claim she's wearing a white dress, although some say they've seen her wearing gray, roaming the halls until the sun comes up. A member of staff working at Blickling Hall reported seeing a figure of a woman reading a book in the library, who then disappeared when the staff member got closer. Upon looking at the book the woman was reading, the steward discovered that the book was open to a page containing a painting of Anne Boleyn. The ghost of Anne Boleyn is not the only spirit believed to reside here. Also claimed to haunt the halls is Sir Henry Hobart, who owned Blickling in the 1600s. Hobart died at Blickling from wounds sustained during a duel. One warden of the property reported that their dog would never cross the threshold into the room that Hobart died in, but would stand at the doorway with hackles raised. Today visitors can explore inside the hall and learn about its fascinating history, And for something more lighthearted, the 55 acres of beautifully landscaped gardens provide the ultimate space to relax. Number 8. Pendle Hill, Lancashire. Pendle Hill is located in the east of Lancashire, near the towns of Burnley, Nelson, Colne, Clitheroe, and Padiham. Its summit is 557 meters above mean sea level, and it gives its name to the borough of Pendle. It is also known as Penuel, and as well as the Pendle Witches, it is known for the Quaker movement, with the original Quaker village still in existence today. There is also a Bronze Age burial site at the summit of Pendle Hill which has recently been discovered. The name Pendle is, and always will be, synonymous with the Pendle Witches. The tale of the Pendle Witches is a great example of well-documented allegation of witchcraft. Until today, the hill continues to be associated with witchcraft. Every Halloween, a large number of visitors climb up the hill wanting to experience the supernatural. In the year 1612, there was said to be a family of local peasants which lived in a huge limestone tower. However, the family was no ordinary family. These peasants had enormous powers and they were reported to be in league with the devil. According to reports, the family made clay effigies made of teeth and human hair. Local people died of various mysterious illnesses at that time. Others were said to have died in great pain. With the milk in the area turned sour and cattle died mysteriously too. People were afraid to go up the hill. A local magistrate, Roger Norwell, had the courage to arrest 2 of the people living in the tower. They were brought to Lancaster for trial, and 2 days later, the rest of the witches were arrested and taken to Lancaster for trial. Haunted Happenings will take you from the viewing platform of Clitheroe's Norman Castle, situated at the foot of Pendle Hill, to various haunted and historic locations related to the Pendle Witches. It is here where you will be told the ghostly history of horror, heroes, and villains. Clitheroe has an atmosphere not too dissimilar to a Transylvanian town. A local source states, "We then leave the town and make our way up onto the slopes of this infamous hill to our base room. We will be keeping together as a group as the mist and darkness descend around us. You may hear the crying sound of the wind in the bracken, a fox or an owl. You may even hear the footsteps of somebody not in our party." The ghosts of Pendle Hill are nearly always connected to the Pendle Witches. However, there are occasions when we have picked up on the ghosts and spirits of others who have died on this daunting and barren hillside. These include the ghosts of children, or aircraftsmen, who have landed here after having their airplanes bombed in the war, along with other unfortunate souls who have died on the hill. We have also encountered those who have taken their own lives here, which is particularly sad. Some of the ghostly activity we have experienced on Pendle Hill defies any sort of logic. On one occasion, whilst carrying out a Ouija board experiment on Pendle Hill at the foundations of Malkin Tower, a tooth landed on the center of the table. This shocked everybody concerned, and after having obviously checked to ensure that nobody in the group had lost a tooth, which was definitely human, it left us in a quandary as to how it got there. The tooth was identified as belonging to an adult of around 40 years of age and was in fact an old tooth. This has only made us more determined to find out who or what is haunting Pendle Hill and working hard towards gaining more evidence on our ghost hunts here. Number 7. Ancient Ram Inn, Gloucestershire. The foreboding atmosphere of the ancient Ram Inn provides the picture-perfect image of a haunted house. The inn was built in 1145 on top of 2 ancient ley lines believed to draw spiritual energy directly from Stonehenge. It has been said that the Ram Inn in Gloucestershire is the most haunted house in Britain, so if you dare to step inside, you're in for a chilling experience. With its rich and troubled history, it's unsurprising that the inn is a popular site for paranormal events. Visitors have reported all manner of haunting experiences, including freezing temperatures and a creaking structure. Although there have been many ghost sightings, one of the inn's most famous ghostly inhabitants is that of a woman who was believed to be a witch in the 1500s. She took refuge at the inn to escape the witch hunts that were prevalent in the area at that time, until she was eventually captured. However, many people believe that her spirit still lingers to haunt the room she stayed in. The moment you enter the old inn, an aura of dreadful foreboding envelopes you. The bare walls, creaking floorboards, steep stairs, and mysterious shadows are sufficient to elicit the coldest of shivers, whilst the legions of ghost stories that come marching from its mist-shrouded past can chill the blood of even the most steadfast cynic. The atmosphere was awful, is how one visitor put it. I can only describe it as pure filth, dark and heavy. The first room that visitors encounter is the men's kitchen. This reputedly stands on the site of a pagan burial ground, and the disturbing sound of a baby crying is often heard here. People ascending the steep staircase up to the first floor have been thrown up the stairs by invisible hands. A photograph taken here in June 1999 showed a mysterious white mist, about the height of a human, ascending the staircase. On the first floor is the Ram's most haunted and terrifying room, the Bishop's Room. A medium, pushing open its door, was once lifted off the ground and flung across the corridor. The atmosphere inside is oppressive and disturbing. A ghostly cavalier has been known to materialize by the dressing table and stride purposefully across to the opposite wall. 2 monks have been seen shimmering in one corner. Witnesses have heard the terrified screams of a man who was, reputedly, murdered here by having his head thrust into the fire. A phantom shepherd and his dog have been seen near the door, whilst those who spend the night in the room have often attracted the lustful attentions of either an incubus or a succubus. Rather a lot for one room, observed visitor John Humphreys. Climbing into the attic and crouching beneath the roof timbers, a feeling of intense melancholy appears to hang in the air. An innkeeper's daughter is said to have been murdered in this roof space in the early 1500s, and people attempting to sleep in the bishop's room below often hear the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor above their heads. The inn is now open on selected days for public visits, or individual tours of the building can also be arranged. Number 6. Chillingham Castle, Northumberland. The castle's name hints to the chilling stories that have been told about Chillingham Castle, and it's widely considered to be Britain's most haunted historic castle. You'll find it in the village of Chillingham, just a 20-minute journey from Alnwick. The castle was originally built as a stronghold in the 12th century, and has seen a turbulent history that saw the castle being attacked due to its crucial position on the border of Northumberland. Chillingham Castle has existed since the 13th century. In 1298, King Edward I stayed at the castle while on his way to the Battle of Falkirk, where he defeated William Wallace. Nearly half a century later, Sir Thomas Grey was granted a license to fortify and crenellate the castle in 1344. By 1348, the castle was transformed into a square structure adorned with towers at its corners. Since then, the castle has remained similar in appearance except for its outer curtain walls linking the towers, which are presently much higher. Throughout the years, Chillingham Castle was involved in various border skirmishes between England and Scotland. Additionally, it was under siege in 1536 when the Percy family of nearby Alnwick Castle attacked with cannon fire during the Pilgrimage of Grace rebellion against Henry VIII. Today, Chillingham Castle is best known for its reputation as one of the most haunted castles in England. There are said to be a mixture of tortured spirits and friendly ghosts at Chillingham Castle, with one of the most talked about being the White Pantry Ghost. The ghost of a frail figure in white is said to appear in the inner pantry begging for water. Historically, the story is told that a footman guarded the pantry because the silver was stored there. One night when he was asleep, he was confronted by a lady in white who begged him for some water. The footman assumed that she was one of the castle's guests and went to retrieve it when he realized that he was locked inside and nobody could have entered. Another one of the castle's most talked about spirits is that of the Blue Boy, who is thought to haunt the Pink Room, and witnesses have claimed to see blue halos of light inside. In his book titled Haunted Castles of Britain and Ireland, authored by Richard Jones, he states, several ghosts are known to wander the castle's time-worn interior. The most famous is that of the Radiant Boy, a childish wraith seen in the castle's Pink Room, whose heart-rendered cries of either fear or pain echoed through the corridors upon the stroke of midnight. In the past, cries always seemed to emanate from a spot near where a passage is cut through the 10-foot thick wall into the adjoining tower. As they faded away, a bright halo of light would appear, and the figure of a young boy dressed in blue would approach those sleeping in the room. Later, the bones of a child, surrounded by decaying fragments of blue cloth, were found behind the wall. They were given a Christian burial, and thereafter the Radiant Boy was seen no more. That is until Sir Humphrey began letting the room. Some guests complain of a blue flash that shoots out of the wall in the dead of night. Although they attribute it to an electrical fault, Sir Humphrey is quick to point out that there is no electrical wiring in that particular section of the wall. Another unquiet soul to stalk the castle is the spirit of Lady Berkeley, wife of Lord Grey, whose husband ran off with her sister, Lady Henrietta. Lady Berkeley was abandoned at the castle, with only her baby daughter for company. The rustle of her dress is sometimes heard as her invisible revenant sweeps along the rambling corridors, searching for her husband and leaving a cold chill, not to mention unsettled witnesses, in her ghostly wake. If you want to explore the haunted halls of Chillingham Castle yourself, there are regular ghost tours and some all-night vigils to try and catch a glimpse of the paranormal. Number 5. Barry Pomeroy Castle, Devon. The once majestic castle has been reduced to a romantic ruin. It is reported to be one of the most haunted places in the British Isles. There are several tales associated with the castle. Although the castle only retains a little of its former glory and grandeur, it continues to captivate visitors who come in the thousands. The castle lands were granted by William the Conqueror to Ralph de Pomaria, a Norman knight. It was a reward for unfailing support and loyalty during the conquest of Britain. Ralph chose not to build a fortress. However, instead, he built an unfortified manor house, which would become his family's home for the next 400 years. It wasn't until the late 15th century that the Pomeroys began to build the castle fortress you see today. This is almost certainly due to the escalating troubles in the area, which would later lead to the War of the Roses. The castle remained in the hands of the Pomeroys until the 1540s. Sir Edward Seymour then acquired the castle with the help of his influential family. Sir Edward Seymour was the brother of Jane Seymour, the third wife of Henry VIII. He made numerous changes to the castle, but it was not long before he made a lot of enemies as the Lord Protector. He was then removed from power by the Earl of Warwick, imprisoned and executed in 1552. The castle remained in the hands of the Seymours until 1688 when it was finally abandoned. The once well-kept castle then started to deteriorate. A good number of rooms were uninhabitable. The English Heritage took over in 1977 to save the castle from complete ruin. In a continual effort to restore the castle, restoration work still goes on. The castle is said to be the abode of various specters. A number of ghostly phenomena and ghostly sightings have been reported in the castle. Some of the most reported apparitions in the castle are the Blue Lady and the White Lady. The White Lady is the restless soul of Margaret Pomeroy. She was held captive in the castle dungeons by her sister, Eleanor, because of jealousy and starved to death in the dungeons. The Blue Lady lures people into various parts of the castle and gets them lost. People believe that she is the ghost of the daughter of one of the Norman castle lords. She was raped by her father and became pregnant with his baby. Her father strangled the child in one of the rooms of the castle. Other tales say that it was she who strangled the child. She has become the death portent of the Seymours. People have witnessed strange lights in the castle. Voices have been heard, and cold spots in the castle have been reported too. There are also the apparitions of a lady wearing a gray dress and a cavalier, as well as ghostly shadows. Number 4. Samlesbury Hall, Lancashire. Gilbert de Southworth built Samlesbury Hall in 1325. It was the family's primary home until the early 1600s. The hall was built to replace a building destroyed during the raid of the Scots back in 1322. Samlesbury Hall played many roles in people's lives during its existence. It was once a boarding house for girls. Since 1925, it has been administered by the Samlesbury Hall Trust. Today, it is a medieval manor house listed as Grade 1, and it attracts more than 500,000 visitors each year. The house where Samlesbury Hall can be found was built with the solar end windows facing the east, as was the practice during that time. The chapel was built 140 years later after the main building was erected. The chapel was built to face east. However, after the chapel was connected to the main hall more than 60 years later, the connection angle was reduced to less than 90 degrees. This was because of the solstice change in the sun's position as the years went by. Samlesbury Hall's ghostly reputation has prompted several paranormal investigators to investigate it. Some of the most prominent investigative shows which have been to the hall are Most Haunted, Ghost Hunters International, and Most Haunted Live. The legendary White Lady is the hall's most famous ghost. Guests, as well as employees, have seen her on several occasions. It is said that the White Lady is the ghost of Dorothy Southworth. Lady Dorothy fell in love with a young man who was a member of the de Haughton family. Unfortunately, Lady Dorothy came from a Catholic family, and the de Haughtons were Protestants. The two lovers were not permitted to marry. They defied their family and continued to see each other. They would meet along the riverbanks of the Ribble, and plan to elope and marry each other. But someone got wind of their arrangement, and it was reported back to Samlesbury Hall. On the night of their arranged elopement, the lady's brother waited in ambush. As soon as the young de Haughton gentleman arrived, the lady's brother sprang from his hiding place and killed the young man, as well as his two companions. They were hastily buried in the chapel grounds. The saddest part about it all was that Dorothy was there to witness all of it. She was inconsolable and had to be sent to a convent overseas. Lady Dorothy's spirit has lingered in the halls. She is often seen floating down the many corridors of the hall, crying for the love she lost. The hall has several cleverly disguised hiding places. However, not even these hiding places can save a priest in the 1500s whose soldiers followed in the hall. He was found, dragged, and beheaded on the spot. According to legend, the priest's blood stained the floor of the room where he was beheaded. No matter how hard the floor is scrubbed, nobody can wash it away. The room was bricked up for 200 years and was reopened in 1898. Servants refused to remain in the room until the floorboards were replaced. The bloodstain is said to occasionally reappear until this day. The Samlesbury Manor House reflects the religious beliefs and styles of the 14th century. Today, Samlesbury Hall is a place that hosts various programs and functions. There are theater productions, guided tours, ghost tours, and murder mysteries for guests to participate in. Number 3. Felbrigg Hall, Norfolk. The Grand Felbrigg Hall estate stands proudly within its vast grounds stretching 1,700 acres. However, amongst the hall's idyllic surroundings there are stories of spirits haunting the area. Felbrigg Hall is situated amidst vast parklands in North Norfolk and is one of the finest houses in East Anglia. Originally the home of the Felbrigg family, the land and house was acquired in the 15th century by the Wyndhams. Its Jacobean facade hides elegant Georgian interiors that speak of the Wyndhams' tastes and fancies over the centuries. Although the last Wyndham died over 200 years ago and the home has been in the hands of the National Trust since the 1960s, not all of its past residents seem eager to quit their former home. One such tale tells of an elderly woman, once a parlor maid in the hall, recounting how she and other maids would find that their candles were mysteriously extinguished whenever they passed by a particular door. A female voice would beckon them to enter the chamber, but the room was always found to be uninhabited. By far the most famous spirit inhabiting the hall is that of William Wyndham III, 1750 to 1810, known as the Fighting Wyndham for his sporting prowess. William Wyndham was a noted orator and a prominent statesman for much of his life. His career spanned the American War of Independence, the French Revolution, and the colonial wars of the early 19th century. But the overriding passion of his life, and the cause of his tragic death, was his love of books. The wonderful Gothic library at Felbrigg, designed by James Payn in the 1750s, was filled with books both William II and William III each brought back from their grand tour. William was to meet his fate one summer evening in 1809. As he returned to his home in Pall Mall, he noticed a fire had taken hold in a house on Conduit Street very close to the residence of his friend Robert North. Wyndham knew that his friend had a very valuable library and he immediately set about the rescue operation. He and 3 others succeeded in rescuing most of the valuable manuscripts. The rescue was not without its price though, as William fell and bruised his hip. The bruise became a tumor, and the tumor needed to be operated on. Operations in the early 19th century were brutal affairs, and William died as a result. His final words, addressed to his physician, were, "I thank you. This is the last trouble I shall give you. You fight the battle well, but it will not do." His body was buried in the family vaults at Felbrigg Church, a stone's throw from the hall, and the specter of William Wyndham can occasionally be encountered in the dark and shadowy Gothic library. He has often been found standing by a table when his favorite volumes were laid out, or ensconced in an easy chair by a roaring fire, engrossed in some favorite book. It would seem like a pleasant way to spend eternity. Leaving the hall and walking about the grounds, you soon find yourself amidst the dark woods of Felbrigg, where oaks, sweet chestnuts, and conifers hold sway. Here you may cross paths with Mad Wyndham, driving his phantom coach through the trees, and a spectral wind rising out of nowhere and disappearing as suddenly as it arose may cause more than a whisper amongst the leaves. You can now visit Felbrigg Hall and take in the elegant furnishings and opulent rooms of one of the most haunted places in Norfolk. Make a point to visit the shadowy Wyndham Library and see where the ghost of William Wyndham III is said to inhabit. Number 2. Corfe Castle, Devon. The dramatic ruined fortress of Corfe Castle can be found within the quiet Dorset countryside. Feeling in stark contrast with its surroundings, the castle's ruins sit on a hillside overlooking the charming village of Corfe. The castle itself dates back to Norman times, and its construction was begun by William the Conqueror. and the castle's vast history adds to its eerie atmosphere and ghost stories. Impressively situated on its lofty throne and protected by steep cliffs, the once vast Corfe Castle is now little more than a hollow shell. Having crossed the stone bridge that spans its deep moat, you find yourself wandering amidst stark, monolithic columns or meandering through narrow corridors where ancient walls lean towards you at strange, almost threatening angles. William the Conqueror began the castle, although it was King John who turned it into the royal palace, the melancholic ruins of which survive today. During the English Civil War, the redoubtable Lady Banks defended Corfe Castle, until she was betrayed by one of her own garrison, who allowed parliamentary soldiers to gain possession of the building, whereupon they set about destroying the edifice. They toppled its mighty walls and undermined its foundations until, within a short period of time, nothing but the hollow shell that you see today remained. An aura of mystery soon descended over the bare ribs of the once regal pile, as people began to whisper of ghostly encounters amidst the moldering ruins. Strange, flickering lights were seen moving about the ramparts at night. The heart-rending sobs of a weeping child were heard in a cottage that abuts the rocky knoll on which the castle stands. But the most persistent of all the specters that haunt the robust remnants is the headless white lady, whose shimmering shade chills the blood of those who chance upon her, and they find themselves shivering and shaking until she turns and drifts slowly away, fading into nothingness as she goes. Number 1. Buckland Abbey, Devon. In a secluded part of the Dartmoor landscape sits Buckland Abbey, in a pretty woodland estate and gardens. Originally built as a monastery but disbanded by King Henry VIII, Buckland was purchased by Sir Francis Drake in 1581 from his great rival, Sir Richard Grenville. At this time, Drake had just returned from his 3-year voyage around the world and was widely considered a hero. Nestling in their peaceful woodland setting, the sleepy buildings of Buckland Abbey blend harmoniously into their surroundings, and no one who ventures here can deny that the whole foundation lies in a time warp. In 1582, the abbey was purchased by Sir Francis Drake, who set about a rebuilding program, which, local tradition claims, took a mere 3 nights to complete because he invoked the assistance of the devil. As punishment for this demonic dabbling, Drake, it is said, has been condemned henceforth to drive a black hearse, drawn by 4 headless horses, across Dartmoor on moonless, windswept nights. The fearsome cortege is pursued by a spectral pack of baying hounds, their hellish screams carried upon the wild winds, as they seek the souls of unbaptized infants. Inside the building is displayed the drum that Drake supposedly gave instructions was to be returned to Buckland Abbey, as he lay dying aboard his ship off Puerto Bello, Panama, in January 1596. The spirit of Drake is said to live on in this battered drum, and there is an old tradition that its beat will be heard whenever England is in danger. It was heard on the eve of the Battle of Trafalgar, and the property is now owned by the National Trust, so visitors can witness the infamous drum that belonged to Sir Francis, which, the last time the drum is supposed to have sounded, was prior to the beginning of the First World War. Thank you for watching episode 10 of Twisted Tales. Subscribe for plenty more to come. See you soon.